Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome and thank you for attending Aswara Classical Piano Masterclass hosted by Aswara Music Faculty. I'm Jamie Tan and I'm the lecturer here. Every year, we invite well-known, experienced, inspiring and professional instructors to conduct the piano masterclass. Giving a piano masterclass is essential and beneficial to piano students. It is a premier class that can bring teaching benefits to pianists as well as the audience. It also serves as an important role in creating a positive and constructive learning environment in conservatory or academia. We will be showing students pre-recorded performances and have the instructor to give comments and feedback on their playing with some demonstrations on the piano. This masterclass will be conducted by Mr. Nicholas Keyworth from UK. He is the former Chief Music Examiner at Trinity College London. He appeared on a series exploring exam music repertoire for BBC Radio 3, as well as traveling internationally giving talks and presentations relating to music assessments. In 2012, he developed and launched the successful Trinity Rock and Pop exams at Trinity in collaboration with Fable Music and Peter's Edition. Here I introduce you Mr. Nicholas Keyworth.
Good morning everyone, and a very big welcome from me, currently in Bangkok, tomorrow back in the UK. I'm delighted to be here. I'm looking forward immensely to hearing the core performances and meeting some of the students. It's a great privilege to be an adjudicator for occasions like this. And I hope I can offer positive and constructive, as Jamie said, comments and supporting not only the students, but also the teachers in this complex process of learning an instrument. Through this pandemic, which we are now hopefully, thankfully, emerging out of, we've had to change the way we operate. And that's been very challenging, but it's also presented lots of opportunities, such as this, the way we can communicate online. We've had to learn how to embrace the new technology to make this possible. And I find this very exciting. It means we can make things more interactive. We can demonstrate things from different parts of the world, and hopefully make that learning experience even richer. That said, I do wish I was there with you in person and hope that I will be one day. Thank you, Jamie.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nicholas. Okay, without further ado, let's start with our first pianist, Ivy Lee, a student in her second year degree, studying the piece for about a month, which is Mozart Sonata in F major, K332, first movement. So I'll be showing her pre-recorded performance. let's have Mr. Nicholas to give some feedback on Ivy's playing.
Thank you very much indeed, Ivy Lee. How are you this morning?
I'm great.
Lovely. Well, great to see you. And thank you for your performance. I was getting some feedback on the sound, on the replay. I don't know whether other people were on this call. I think because I'm hearing the video and I'm also hearing it through the speakers in the place where you are. So it was like a sort of a double effect. It was like having you playing it, having two of you playing it in a duet. But luckily, I had a sneak preview of these videos last night. So I've already heard your performance. So that was my second time of hearing. So that was quite useful, actually. When we come back to things afresh, we hear new things. That's a wonderful piece, isn't it? Do you enjoy playing it? It's full of life, full of hope, I think. Interestingly, as you probably know, Mozart wrote that 1783, probably when he was visiting Salzburg. And we think that he was writing it during the time that he was introducing his new wife, Constance, to his father, Leopold. Leopold had been quite a controlling figure in Mozart's life, so he must have been quite anxious at the time, hoping that his father would like Constanza. And I think in this music, there's a lovely sense of life and hope and exuberance that we want to come across. That said, I think we have to be careful with music of this period in trying to put too many stories onto it, because this is what we call abstract music in a sense. It's not about anything. It's not inspired by anything. It's just music. It's just notes. And I think that's rather nice that we can forget about pictures and imagery and we just concentrate on the feeling in the music and the inspiration that we feel from the notes. So I've got quite a lot of things to say about the piece and about your performance. I'd like you just to start it again, please. And I'd like to see you and hear you play it live. I'm only going to hear the first couple of lines, but I'd like to see how it looks and comes across now. Perhaps you'd just start it for me, please. That's great. That's great. I just wanted to get a sense of how it feels and how it feels for you playing it on a different piano and not being recorded in the same way. It's a different sort of pressure, isn't it? At the beginning of the music, it says allegro. Allegro is a very flexible word, really. Fast and lively, yes, but how fast and how lively? If you listen to some other recordings of some of the great pianists playing this, there's loads of them out there on YouTube, for example. You'll hear so many different interpretations of the music, different tempos. I think I would put it this way. In my opinion, you don't need to play it any faster than you are. In fact, you could even just ease it back a bit. And the reason I say that is because the allegro, it's 3 beats in a bar. It's not a 1 in the bar. It's not this, it's not. It's a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So we can go a little slower. Can you try at that sort of speed for me, please? Just the beginning. Yes, lovely. And then when you do get to the little ornamentation, that little mordant coming up at that first line and the trills later on, you've got a little more space to think, a little more time to allow those to really sing out. And singing is really important. This melody is such a singable melody, and it's one that really does need to float above the Alberti bass in the left hand. So getting the balance right between the hands is essential. We don't want to hear too much of that. We want to get that balance nice. Yeah. Keep that left hand down, keep it under control, and let the right hand sing. Okay, lovely. I'm going to throw another idea at you now, because I noticed, I'm assuming that this copy is it the same as you're playing? Is it the same edition? And at the bottom right, in very small words, and is the name of the publisher and the date. Can you see that down the bottom right? It's very small.
First line.
The very bottom line in the music, down there, what does that say? Have you got it? Are we on the same edition?
It's not.
Jamie, can you just jump in here and just
1973.
does it say Ausgegenben?
I think it's.
Or is it it may be a different edition you're playing from. I'm not sure whether Jamie
Oh, it
sent
might be
me.
different. Yeah, I think, yeah, she copied out from the
Okay,
Royal School.
that's fine, because there are many different versions of Mozart in particular. Mozart, Bach, Handel, Beethoven, Haydn. Because when that music was written, it didn't look like this. I'm going to show you something interesting. It looked like this. Can you see that? These little scribbles. This is actually Mozart's own handwriting. And what is really interesting is that the details that Mozart put into his own music are different from the ones in this one. Now, the edition that I've got here is, it says Ausgegenben 1878. So this music, this version was produced in 1878. You remember that Mozart wrote this in 1783. So it's nearly 100 years later before we have someone reinterpreting the music and publishing it like this. Can I ask what edition you're playing from? Do you know? Has it got a publisher's name on there?
1973. 1973. Edition.
Royal School.
Oh, Royal School. Royal School of Music.
Okay, Royal School of Music. Good. They're pretty good. Because what they do is they look back at the original. They don't just reprint this from 1878. They take the original and really carefully analyze the music and make sure all the details are as authentic as possible. Now, I'm quite interested in this because I'm a composer. I'm a composer more than a performer, really. So I write music for other people to worry about. Other people have to do the practice then rather than me. And as a composer, I have to not only create music, I've got to write it down. And then I've got to be sure that when it's printed and published, it's exactly what I want. Yeah. So I've got an example here of these are some of my works called Globetrotter. And these are little piano pieces, little piano miniatures really. But you'd be amazed how many attempts we had to make to get this right, free of errors and mistakes. And with me as a composer, looking at it and thinking, I think I'll just change that articulation. I don't like that. I want to change that dynamic. I want to fiddle around a bit more until I'm happy I've got it right. Now, Mozart didn't have that benefit because all he did was write down his scribbles, and then he probably played it a few times, and he probably memorized it because he was such a genius. And then this would be put in a drawer and forgotten until someone else found it, maybe 100 years later, and then decided to publish it. And that publisher, especially in the 19th century, would often make changes. They'd think, oh, I think we'll change that a bit, we'll change that phrasing. And what I've got here, I want to know how the right hand is phrased at the beginning in your music. Can you tell me, has it got one long phrase over the first 4 bars, or is it broken down into shorter phrases?
Long phrase?
One long phrase. I suspected so. Which is what this one is, which is not correct. That is not what Mozart wrote, because I studied this last night, the original manuscript. And what Mozart, it's probably too small and too blurry to see, but you might see at the beginning there, he's put a phrase over each bar. Now I know it's, you can track this down on the internet somewhere. That makes quite a big difference. Yes, I know it's a 4-bar phrase. But what Mozart wanted us to do was just separate it out bar by bar. Can you hear the difference? That's actually what Mozart wrote. Isn't that interesting? And the same in the left hand. We have. Yeah, so if we separate it into four bars within that sentence, maybe that's a good way of thinking of it, separating phrases and sentences. The sentence is 4 bars long, but there are 4 phrases within it. That might change the way we think about performing it. Try it, just have a go. Think of it as 4 phrases rather than one smooth one. Yes. To my mind, that is sounding more Mozartian, sounding more authentic. So I'm very keen that people use good editions for the music, especially of this period. The Royal Schools Associated Board are very good. There are even better ones out there. I use something called Henley edition wherever I can. Henley are, it's a German production, of course. Mozart was Austrian, so from his part of the world. And you'll see that they've taken the original and basically recreated that, but it's so beautifully clear and easy to read, it does make a huge difference. There's only one problem with Henley edition, and that is they're a bit expensive, but it is worth the investment because they are so beautiful to read and look at. And I find it easier to read, and if it's easier to read, it's easier to learn. Imagine if we'd given you that to learn a month ago. You'd have been struggling, wouldn't you? Because it's such a load of scribble. Okay, you've done brilliantly in a month with that. I just think, wouldn't it be interesting just to do a parallel course and see if you'd had a different edition that's really clear, would it have been easier? Don't know. Something to think about. Okay, let's go on. But that was one of the main things I wanted to say about authentic performance editions. But now I'd like to start to look a bit more into the music. And Jamie, do sort of wind me up because you're the timekeeper here, so I need to know when you want to move on, but I'll just keep talking until someone says stop.
All right, sure.
Okay, now then. I want to talk about the ornaments, the little mordant in bar 8 and the little flourishes, the little grace notes that we've got in bars 25, 26. Of course, you don't know where I am with bar numbers because your edition may or may not have bar numbers, does it? No. Neither did this one, so I wrote them all in. I always, because I'm also a conductor, if you're rehearsing with someone or an orchestra or anything, you stop and you say something and then you say, okay, let's go from bar 56. You don't want people going to the music and counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You've got to have the bar numbers immediately there. So, okay, well, I think you can, bar 8 is easy enough. That's where you've got the little mordant there. And it's a tricky one because you also have to hold down the G at the same time. So your hand isn't as free as it would normally be. So it can sound a bit mushy. Could you just play from bar 5 for me? And let's see how that sounds. I think the thing about all ornaments is that they need to be rhythmic, especially Mozart ones. So, dum dum bum bum. Yours is sounding a bit like a turn. A turn is that. It's not that. It's the elements. The first note is then. So put that in the context of the rhythm, and we should have. And with both hands from bar 5 again. I'm sorry?
G note.
I can't hear you.
G note. G.
The G. Hold down the G. So. It's getting the. Yeah, that's it. That's it. It's tricky, isn't it? Tricky. It is tricky. So it's because your fourth finger is probably the fourth, holding down the G, which leaves those two for the little twiddle, and then your thumb for the D. And that, because that's holding it down, these two fingers don't do what we expect them to do. They don't work normally because of this finger being held down. If our hand is free, it's fine, we can do it. But with this one held down, it's really tricky to get that independence of the fingers. So that's one to work on. Okay, further down on my page, it's about half, well, there's a couple of these little spread chords, really, which are written out. See that? Will you just play from there for me? Yeah, those are fine. Those are absolutely fine because you've got that freedom in the hand to push those out. One of the things I jotted down was about more dynamic contrast as well. So we're starting piano, but when we get to just before where we are now, we change to forte with this. That little bit, that little statement, which sort of says, right, now we're going in a different direction. Can you just take it from that forte? Okay, nice. When you're doing this, It's sounding a little bit light, actually, a little bit too piano. I want you to see if you can keep that forte sound going. Keep it strong right through. Nice. Yeah, that's good. Just don't let it run away with itself. There's a danger of it just feeling, oh, it's fast music, so I've got to play as fast. You don't remember what we said earlier? 3 in a bar, not 1 in a bar. Bum, bada 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 dum 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 2 3 1 2 3. Okay, good. There's one little bit where there's always a danger. Everyone does this. When you have a dotted note, people tend to cut it too short. So moving on from where we've just got to, can you see a dotted crotchet? Just a bit. Oops. That little bit. Can you just go perhaps 2 bars before that, where we have the G major spread? Yeah, that dotted crotchet was too short. 1 2 diddle 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 dum bomb. 1 2. It's 1 2 diddle diddle diddle, not 1 2 diddle diddle diddle. Again, same place. That was better. That was more rhythmic. Okay, moving on from there, which is bar 41, by the way. Let's hear where everything changes, the character changes, and we move into what some people refer to as the galant style. Let's hear that. Rum, bum, bum, woo, doo. Okay, nice, thank you. Now, galant style. It's a funny word, that, galant. I'm not absolutely sure what it means, but it's something to do with elegance. And we've certainly got that in there. In the 1 2 3 4 5th bar of that, we've got another one of those awkward little turns. That little bit. 1 2. Dum, dum, da, dee, da, dum. Try from bar 41, where the galant starts. Yes, it sounds a bit late to me, that little bit. If you take away the little grace notes, we have 1 2, don't we? 1 2. But the grace notes mustn't affect that. 1 2. 1 2. 1 2. Dilly yum bum ba dum. Yes, I think you're getting stuck on the before you move on to the G and the A. Those are a little late because I don't know why. Can you hear that? So the da-dum, G-A needs to be on that 3rd beat. 1 2 da-da-da-dum. Everything needs to fit in before that. Okay, I think we're nearly there. Yes! That's it, you got it. Well done, brilliant.
Sorry to interrupt. Maybe another 5 minutes, Nicholas.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thanks. Okay, let's jump on to one of the best bits, which is in a couple of lines' time, where we have it as forte, and you have this bit. Yep. I'd love to hear you play this. Okay, brilliant, lovely. Enjoyed that, and you did that much better than you did on the recording. Maybe it's because it's on a bigger piano, I don't know, but you captured the style, which is known as Sturm und Drang, which means storm and stress. Yeah, it's a term that applies to music of this period. Haydn actually started it and put in all these sort of stormy moments, and there's a bit of tension in the music, and that comes across well. So that's why we have those forte pianos at the beginning of each bar, a bit like accents, but just a bit heavier at the start of the bar, and then immediately pulling back. And it's really important to get that contrast, I think. With perhaps a little touch of pedal, which I think you're doing anyway, just to give it a bit more noise from within the piano. Let's hear it again. Yes, lovely. And at the end of that section, where we have those slightly awkward little passage in consecutive thirds with one hand, which is never easy. That little bit, yeah. With a smooth slur underneath them. Don't rush it, because it's taking us back into a different section. Just pull back on the reins and give it a bit more time. Yep, don't I just hear that little corner? Yes, that's much more elegant. Lovely, lovely. Okay, the next section is the development section. Dynamics is all I need to say here. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bars, piano, and then it becomes forte. Let's have a very clear distinction between these, what we sometimes call terraced dynamics. You're at one level and you go up a step to the next. Could you just start that development section for me, please? No, hang on, stop. That's hold. That's not the development section. You're still in the exposition. The double bar, yeah, that's the start of the development section, the middle section of the piece. That little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the development. This is where Mozart takes everything he's done to that point and starts again, but works it in a different direction. Yeah, okay. Have you got forte marked there in your edition? Oh, okay. Well then, I don't know. Because in this is why editions vary, and I don't know the answer. This is a really good example. I'm so glad this has happened. You see here we have at the beginning there, piano, and then at this point there we have a forte. Okay, you don't have that? How interesting. I don't know what's correct. Probably your edition, because it's better than this Agan. But to find the right answer, we have to go back to this, to Mozart's original manuscript, and see what he wanted. Because it sort of makes sense, but maybe not. That's a really excellent example. I didn't know that was going to happen. That wasn't planned. But that shows the difference between these editions and how we need to sometimes do a bit of research to see what is actually authentic. Okay. I think everything that follows on from that would be me just more or less saying what I've said already, because things I've circled and marked are about tidy ornaments, not cutting the dotted notes short. When you get to the end of a section, just pulling back the tempo ever so slightly to give yourself a bit more space, and also the audience to have a bit more before we move on. Yeah? Just play me the ending, if you would, to finish off. I'd like to see how you round off the piece to make it feel like it is the ending. The last couple of lines, wherever it's convenient to start from, please.
From here?
Yeah, I don't know where that is, but that'll do. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. I think you just need to place those last three chords a little more carefully. What I mean by that is just space them out ever so slightly. Imagine you're conducting it. Imagine you've got an orchestra there. You're not going to go doesn't feel like an ending. Something like that makes it feel like the finale. Perhaps just play the last 4 bars. The last 3 chords were great. Can you just do the last 4 bars again, though, please? Yeah, that feels like an ending to me now. So that's terrific. So there we go, Ivy Lee. Lots of things to think about. Lots of ideas I've thrown at you. But thank you very much. I enjoyed that. I think we all did. I don't know if it's possible to give a round of applause, but I will give you one and people can join in from wherever they are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. Let's go to the second performer. All right, our second performer will be Nathan Agan Idris, and he will be performing Prelude in B minor, Opus 32, number 10, by Rachmaninoff, and I'll be sharing his pre-recorded performance. All right, thank you. So we'll have Mr. Nicholas to give some feedback.
Thank you very much, Nathan. What a wonderful piece that is. And how very different it is from the Mozart we heard earlier, isn't it? It's in a different world. It feels like a much more grown-up piece than Mozart, which is sort of much more innocent. This one has got real depth to it and passion. Maybe it's because he was quite a bit older when he wrote it. Mozart was about 26 when he wrote that sonata. Rachmaninoff is 37, 10 years or so older. But also, he was in Russia at a time when things were changing. Not an easy place to be. And he was soon to leave Russia because of the revolution in 1918. And then he went to America, to the United States, where he lived for the rest of his life. There's a darkness to this piece. I think you captured that beautifully, actually, very sensitively, and it was very controlled. I don't know if you know the story behind the Preludes, but basically Rachmaninoff, like several other composers around that time, were inspired by what Bach had done in the 18th century, when Bach wrote a set of preludes and fugues, 48 of them, well, 24, one for every major and minor key, and he published those, and then he started all over again and wrote another book of 34. That's why we call it the Bach 48. And other composers like Debussy and others did a similar thing. Rachmaninoff also did it. He wrote 24 preludes in major and minor keys. We don't know whether he intended to, or whether it ended up like that, but he did it nevertheless, and this is one of them. But unlike Bach and unlike Mozart, this is inspired by something. Have you any idea what? Okay, I'll tell you. In fact, I'm going to show you. In fact, for all four performers, I've got something to show you, which is quite nice, isn't it? This is what I've got to show you, Nathan. That's a painting by an artist called Arnold Böcklin, and it's called Die Heimkehr, which means the homecoming. I don't know about you, I think it's a very dark and gloomy painting. I can't quite see what's going on. I thought initially it was somebody who just got out of the swimming pool, but it's not. It's someone waiting or longing, coming home, or waiting for someone to come home. Painted in 1887, and this was apparently this is Rachmaninoff's inspiration for that prelude. So it's music that creates an image, creates a picture, tells a story. We don't really know the detail of the story. It doesn't matter. It's just like an impression of a feeling about a story. There's a little, in the painting, you see that little, that's a little window in the distance, like a little light on inside a house. Presumably, that's where this chap is heading. The homecoming. What difference does it make, looking at a picture? I think it helps us to understand a little bit more about the character of the music, perhaps. That said, I think you captured the character very nicely anyway. So maybe it's not so important for you, but it's interesting. For me, it's interesting, and I hope it is for you, to see where this idea comes from. Let's have a little look at what you're playing. Can you just start at the beginning for me again? We have lento at the beginning, which is incredibly slow. A very, very slow pulse going on through this. It's quite hard to maintain a steady, slow pace. They usually tend to get quicker. And so we need to keep that absolutely under control. And I think you're doing something like this. Something like that. So could you please play us the opening again? Okay, thank you very much. Lovely. I think you've got the tempo just right. There's something odd in the music here. There's something impossible in the music, actually, unless, well, there is a solution. We have the opening idea, and then we have these, which is marked as am I correct? It's marked as a staccato note, the chords. But we also have that held on at the same time. So how do we do that? How do we sustain the chords with the ties and play a staccato note in the middle? What's the answer? Do you have a solution?
Just pedal the chord.
Show me. I don't hear a staccato note, though, do I? Yeah, it's impossible unless you have a piano with 3 pedals. And the middle pedal, I don't know about, what have you got there? 2?
I have 3 here.
Okay. With bigger pianos, more advanced pianos, if you like, with a middle pedal, that is a selective sustain pedal. I certainly haven't got it on my little electric one here. But what that does is that you play the chord you want to sustain, then you place down the middle pedal, and that will hold those notes on, and then anything you play outside of that, you can play staccato. That's what Rachmaninoff wanted. And unless we've got a piano with 3 pedals, we can't do it. So you will find one that does, and you'll be able to experiment with it. And wow, it's a transformation then, because we start to understand what he was trying to get at. I think that's the aim. If we can't do that, because we haven't got that feature on the piano, then we have to give the impression of it somehow. What is most important, I think we have to decide. Is it the sustained chord, or is it that staccato effect? If we say it's the staccato effect, then we're going to lose the we lose the sustain. If we do it the other way around and say the sustain chord is more important, then we lose the staccato. So we can't have it both ways. We have to make a decision. I think the latter is probably better, keeping the sustained feeling. So we have to do that consistently throughout. Okay, that's one of the challenges of a piece like this, when Rachmaninoff was writing ahead of his time in a way. Well, perhaps not, but he was using the full features of the instrument as it had developed at that time. Compare that with the Mozart, where the piano was a much more basic instrument than the one you're playing now. So Mozart didn't even think about things like, he didn't write down pedal markings or anything like that. They had a pedal, probably just one sustaining pedal, but they didn't bother to write down how to use it. When we get to this time, 19th century, composers started to write pedal markings. In my edition of this Rachmaninoff, there are none, because it is expected that you will know what to do. So, some thoughts there on pedaling and how to make the most of that. I don't know what edition this is. I mean, I know I was slightly critical of editions for the Mozart. By the time we get to Rachmaninoff, it's more recent anyway, so they probably are more authentic. I don't know what this one is, Augner or something. What's your edition there? Does it say?
It doesn't mention.
Down the bottom of the first page, has it got A and then numbers and G?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the same. So it's probably Augner or one of those. Augner went out of business in, I think, 1915. So they were bought out by another publishing company and then another and then another. That often happened. So later editions of this will have changes in them as well. I don't know what's authentic and what's real. Some of them will have pedal markings that an editor has put in for people who don't know what to do. I don't think you need that, because you use the pedal very well, the one that you have. Let's have a look at tempo a bit more, and the tempo changes. I like the tempo that you have at the beginning with the lento, but on the fifth line we have a poco più mosso. I'd like you to play from there, please, where I want to see how that basic underlying pulse starts to change at this point. Thanks.
From there?
Yeah, that's fine. Just go straight in there. Okay, thank you. The key word there is poco, a little bit more movement. Only a little. Don't go too fast, because your lento at the beginning was a very slow lento, and I like that. But now it's going too much the other way. It's only a little bit faster. There's plenty of time later to do more fast stuff. At the moment, keep it under control, just get a little more movement. That's all poco più mosso means. A little more movement. Doesn't say fast. Doesn't even say faster. Just says a little more movement. That's all. Okay, perhaps you can do that again for me. Just a little bit calmer with the tempo. Okay, yeah, that was better. There was in bar 3 you started to get faster, and try not to do that. Try and keep it under control. Could you do it again and keep going? So I want to hear how you then move into the pesante section on the last bar. Okay, thank you. Nice. Okay, this is an important transitional passage there from that word pesante up until tempo 1, back to tempo 1. There's always a temptation to get faster again, and there's no indication in the music that I can see that it should get faster. There are other things. It becomes heavier, pesante. It becomes a little bit louder, little by little. And then on the last, top of page 2, third bar, we have a ritardando. We're slowing down, we're pulling it back. We're not getting faster, we're slowing down as we lead back to the first tempo, which is your tempo 1, which is that lento at the very start, yeah? So could you go from pesante this time, please? And I want you to keep that, the poco più mosso tempo was just right, but try not to get faster now, even though there's more going on and you feel it. Don't do that. Just yum, bum, 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 bum. That's the effect we need here. Okay, so from pesante, please. We're nearly there. I'd like to shape that a bit more carefully, though, by what you're tending to, what I hear, I think maybe there's distortion on microphones and things. What I'm hearing on the top of the second page is you have a big chord, and then it feels as though you're going down to piano and a crescendo through the bar to the next loud chord. And there's no indication that that's what Rachmaninoff wanted. What he wants is an overall crescendo through it. So try not to go down to piano after the big chord in each bar. Try and keep the intensity through the dynamic, increasing overall until we reach the fortissimo on the second line. Yeah. Okay. Once more, please, the pesante. Got that? The second bar on the second page. That needs to be forte. The chord after your big, whatever it is called, B minor chord. After that one, that all needs to be big and strong. Don't go down to piano. We've moved on from that. We're now halfway up. We're halfway to fortissimo. All of that bar needs to be much more strong. Yeah. Go from just go from the top of the page there. Yes. Okay. We've got the dynamics right. Now we need to get the tempo right, because there's a sense I have a sense of increasing urgency and getting faster. Even that ritardando is nowhere near enough a ritardando for me. And it starts at the beginning of the bar. Your ritardando is only at the moment the last 3 notes of that bar. So top of that page again, you've got the dynamics right now, but I want to hear the pace not getting faster at all. In fact, the reverse, holding it back as much as you possibly can. And the 3rd bar on that page, really slowing down from the beginning, the very beginning of that bar. What is it? Boom. Yep. Hold back. Okay. Top of the page, please. Okay, good. The problem is still in this, it's the middle bar on that top of the page where you're still getting faster. I want you to get, I don't want you to get faster at all. I'd rather you got slower than faster. Try it again, top of the page, please. That's getting there. Work at that. Stretch those 4 bars from pesante more, I think, overall. Just stretch them as long as you dare. And the tension, that feeling of I suppose this tension isn't quite the right word. That intensity will be even more effective that way. By playing it with those little crescendos in each bar, it doesn't do enough. It's got to be an overall getting louder and an overall pulling back, and then that ritardando bar, really pulling it back as much as you possibly can until the crash of the fortissimo in tempo 1. Yeah, good. Okay, next thing I want to look at with you is page 3, please. It's again, the reason I'm saying this is because of the pulse. When I heard your recording, and this is a very deceptive passage because what Rachmaninoff has written is a sense of the music getting faster. But it's very clever because it doesn't get fast. The pulse must remain the same. And he's written deliberately l'istesso tempo at the beginning. So no accelerandos, no racing ahead here. Keep that pulse steady. Okay, let's hear it from bar 42, please. You wouldn't see what I was doing then. I was conducting. I was just conducting the beat. And the beat I started with in bar 42, or is it page 42? Page 42. By the time you got to the 4th bar, you'd got 1 beat ahead of me. Okay? Imagine I'm conducting my orchestra and you're the I don't know, you're the French horn player and everyone is with me, but the French horn player is going faster and he's a beat ahead of everyone else. It'll be chaos. So I want you to, I wish I was there in person. I'd be standing in the piano, by the piano there and conducting you and holding you back. I tell you exactly where you went faster, and it's in the 1, 2, 3, 4th bar on that page. About halfway through And that fourth beat, where you have that top A, that chord, that's the one that you're placing too soon. It's just coming too early. And you lose that sense of the pulse. Because you're thinking about, oh, I've got fast notes, so I need to play fast. Don't. Think of the pulse. Think of that beautiful pulse that you set up at the top of the page and maintain it. Okay, one more time, please. Lo stesso tempo. Okay, thank you. That was better. That was definitely better. Be careful when you get to leggere, lightly. Again, because we've got the half beats and bum, 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 bum. Again, there's always a danger of getting quicker when you're doing that sort of thing. Always keep thinking about that, feeling that pulse as you go along. Okay, I'm afraid your screen has frozen your end. Can you hear me okay and see me okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right, I'll keep
Another
going.
5 minutes, Nicholas.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's look at the cadenza. I'm going to talk about tempo again, I'm afraid. I want you to start this slower. There's always a feeling when we see a cadenza like this that, oh, it's loads of quick notes. You've got to shape it. It's not just a continuous, right, start fast now and stop at the end. You've got to go into it, and then the pace will start to increase, and then at the end, pull back and slow, slow, slow until you get to that final top note, and then that big pause before we get back to dum dee dee dee. Okay, so I'd like you please to play the cadenza. So this is the bottom of the third page, bottom of page 42. Maybe just find somewhere convenient to start down the bottom of the page, please. Okay. Yeah, I think you've got the little group of 5, and then I'm not going to attempt to play this. I want you to do this sort of pace, and then into it. Those first 4 or 5 notes, yeah, the first 4 or 5 notes there. Just place them a bit more carefully, a bit more, so we can hear the notes. Otherwise, it's just a mush of it's just like, it sounds like that. I want to hear those notes individually, the first 4 or 5 or 6 notes. Okay, try that again, please. Perfect. That's perfect. That's great. That's it. You could do more. I'll always say you can do more, but it works. That's the main thing. It makes all the difference, just placing those first few notes before you roll into the rest of the cadenza. Okay, let's do that right through, and I want to hear how you slow down at the end, how you do the reverse of that when we get to the end of that section, please. Okay. Can you play the second line on the last page, I want to hear the notes a bit more clearly. I'm hearing lots of this. I want to hear the individual notes a little more, and on the third, from the third group where it says diminuendo, I want you also to add in a ritardando from that point. So if you could play from the second line, please. Yeah, that was magical. Well done. And then that top note, I got a sense of, oh, I don't know how long I should be holding this for. So I wasn't sure when it ended. It sort of, it can be long. I know there's a pause after that, but I suspect that pause includes that note. It's a high enough note, that F sharp up there. The pedal isn't going to make a lot of difference, but I would keep the pedal going through it, otherwise you'll lose the resonance underneath. So keep it held with the pedal, and then off and a long pause. Yum, dee dum dum. Okay, so let's hear that second line again, please. Beautiful. Absolutely magical. Well done. You got it. You paced it right. It's so important to get that pacing correct. Right, finally, the last three bars. Now, these spread chords, I'm not yet convinced. Can I hear what you're doing, please? The last three bars, start wherever you like. Okay, yeah, I thought so. What has the composer written? He's written a wiggly line, so it's a spread chord. Has he written one continuous wiggly line or two separate wiggly lines? Have a close look.
Two separate.
Yeah, that's different. If it was one continuous wiggly line, then what you've done would be correct. It's an arpeggio that goes one hand into the next. But what he's written is an arpeggio shape where both hands are simultaneous. Yeah, it's like harp-like, where a harpist does that on a harp, as opposed to this, one after the other. Yeah, so we have to do both together. I know what you're also doing. You're doing aren't you, or something? The left hand over the right. I don't think you're supposed to do that. You've got to spread your hand out. You've got plenty of time. So that's what the right hand is going to do. And at the same time, the left hand is going to do. Both of those things come together. You get the idea? Can you try that again? This will feel very weird. Yes, that's good. Take your time, no rush. You don't have to go brum. Let's hear each note individually. And because you've got 5 notes in each hand, you could coordinate them. Bom, 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 bom. Perhaps. Yeah. Okay, one more time and then carry on to the end. Okay, wonderful. Okay, terrific. Thank you, Nathan.
Alright,
Thank you very much. Enjoyed that very much. I hope you did. Lots of things to think about, but overall, a beautiful performance. Well done.
Thank you. Have a great day ahead.
Don't forget the picture in your head.
Alright.
Okay,
Back on
so
track.
yeah, we'll continue to the third performer. Okay, our third performer is all Shamin, and she'll be playing The Cat and the Mouse by Aaron Copland.
I was saying thank you very much for a lovely performance. And what a great piece of music that is, isn't it? The Cat and the Mouse. Scherzo humoristique by an American composer, Aaron Copland. A very youthful Aaron Copland. Certainly younger than Rachmaninoff writing his Prelude, and even younger than Mozart, which is an unusual thing to say, because Copland was only 20 when he wrote this. And it's got a lovely youthfulness about the music. It's also very experimental, and Copland was a great experimentalist. He wrote this in 1910. Before he really started studying, he went to Paris the following year and then studied with some of the great names of European music. People like Ravel and Poulenc and Satie, Debussy. But he also liked the really experimental composers, the avant-garde, like Webern and Berg and Schoenberg. So he had this wonderful range of influences in his music. Anything goes with Copland. He also liked jazz, which I think is quite interesting. Jazz in its early form in 1910, very experimental, very controversial. A lot of people hated it, but Copland loved it. And it influences some of the writing, I think, in some ways. So, what's it all about, this piece? Oshi, can you tell me what's the story? I know it's obvious, but tell me a little bit about the way you see it.
It's kind of like a mouse chase between mouse and cat.
Yeah. There is a real storyline going on here, isn't there?
Yeah.
Here's your picture. You may not be surprised to see what it is.
Yes.
We all think of this, don't we? Tom and Jerry, as such the obvious inspiration for this piece of music. But the interesting thing is, Copland was so ahead of his time. In 1910, Tom and Jerry didn't exist. It was another 20 years before this was invented. And it became a cartoon in 1940. Hanna-Barbera cartoons. And of course now, we all know it, we all recognize it, we all love it. And we hear it in the music. But Copland didn't. So where did Copland's inspiration come from if it wasn't that? Well, I had to look into it. And there's an old fable, an old story by a French writer called Jean de La Fontaine, called The Cat and the Young Mouse. And that is probably the inspiration for this piece of music. It's probably also the inspiration for this.
Yeah.
But the Cat and the Young Mouse, the story came first. There's another composer who was also influenced by the same piece of writing by Jean de La Fontaine, and that was Hector Villa-Lobos. Villa-Lobos was where was he from? South American? Spanish, South American? Wrote a lot of music for the guitar. And he wrote a piece of music which is also based on the same story, but for the guitar. I think it's the guitar. So Copland wasn't alone in coming up with this idea. But what he's done with it, I don't know the story itself. I don't know how literal it is to the story. And in a way, it doesn't matter because it's obvious which is the cat and which is the mouse and what happens. Cat chases the mouse gets away a few times, and then something happens at the end, doesn't it? Do you think it's got a happy ending or not?
Not a happy ending.
Not happy ending. Probably not. Although it's left with a bit of a question mark.
Yes.
As if there could be another episode and the mouse is okay again. We don't know. We don't really know, but it's slightly, oh dear. mouse has sort of lost the battle. Okay, the lovely thing about this piece, I love this style of music. It does remind me of Poulenc, who's a French composer who also wrote sort of crazy music like this. And that is just how flexible it is. I know Poulenc has written down lots of details about tempos and things like that, and indications, a bit faster here, a bit slower, still faster, long pause, etc., etc. But I always think of a piece of music, the score, as the blueprint for the performance. It's not the finished thing. The finished thing is what you do with it. This is just the blueprint. So it's worth always, I think, for everyone to see what other people have done and have a look at some videos. There's loads out there on YouTube, of course, and other platforms, of famous performers playing this piece, and they all do it differently. So it's good to hear that, and you'll see, oh, that's interesting, I like that, and oh, I don't like that. What's he doing there? It's a mess. They're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But there are things that you'll like and things that you might reject. And that's quite interesting and useful. And a very good way of learning, I think. Always telling my students, go and watch some YouTube videos of this piece, and then you can decide what you want to do with it. Sometimes they have their own ideas, and that's great. Sometimes they need a bit of inspiration from others. Okay, let's get on with it. It's a piece that needs so much control, and inevitably there are some messy moments. Let's have a look at those, and let's try and get a bit more control into the way we're approaching it. Okay, beginning starts very slow, well, quite slowly and cautiously, and then something happens in the fourth bar. Can I hear you play the first line, please? Okay, nice. In the beginning of the third bar, there's a rest, but it's not going to sound like a rest because we're holding the pedal down underneath anyway, which is fine. But I think mentally, we need to feel that space before we move on to that rising phrase. Visually as well, you need to convey that there's a rest to the audience. You have the first statement, this one. And so on, yeah? You saw what I did? I played out that rest visually. Can I see you do the same, please? Oh, stop. The pedal should still be held down, look. Keep the pedal going on. One other thing, the first phrase has got a lovely legato line over it. So can we join those notes together? Even though you've got no pedal, you need to make sure they're nice and smooth. Great, okay, first three bars, very happy with those. The third bar, of course, we have staccato notes written above the notes and a legato line, and we're holding the pedal down. There's not a lot we can do about it because the pedal is down anyway, but I think visually and mentally think of it as bom, 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 bom. Yeah. even though they won't necessarily sound quite like that. Now, when we get to the next bar, precipitously. What does that word mean to you?
Precisely.
I think it means falling off the edge, falling off a cliff. Precipitous means very, very steep, precipitously. So, to my mind, it suggests that you've got this very steep cliff and you're falling over the edge. I don't think that means when you fall off the edge, you don't go, you go, think about cartoons, they go, whee, and then down. So you start a little bit slower and then you fall. Especially in cartoons. You know the cartoons where they run off the edge of the cliff? You see them doing this? And their legs keep running and then, yeah, that sort of feeling. So at the beginning of that, diddle-lump, diddle-lump, diddle-lump. Just don't go quite so mad at the very first notes. Let's hear those first 3 or 4 notes a little more clearly, and then we can race on ahead. Have a go. Yes. They've all got, yeah, and just looking at the note values there, they've all got 3 beams, haven't they? They're all demi-semiquavers, and there's a 10. You see the little 10s, which means there's 10 of them in a beat. Now the beat doesn't. I don't know. The beat is whatever we want it to be here, really. All he said at the beginning of the line is moderately. But the rhythm is not diddle-diddle-lump, 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 diddle-diddle-la, is it? They're all the same. Diddle-diddle-lump, 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 diddle-diddle-la. That's how it should be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just the first group, again, a little bit easier. Diddle-diddle-lump, 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 and then on. Yeah? Let's have the precipitous bit again, then. Okay, one more time. Okay, and then make sure you hold down that last chord for this, and although it doesn't look like it, it's the second half of the bar, isn't it? Because it's tied, that last demi-semiquaver is tied onto a minim for 2 whole beats. Think about how long 2 beats are. Think back to your first bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 1 and 2 and, plus at the very end of the first line you've got a pause, a hemiola, and the word long. So it's going to be more than that. 1 and 2 and a bit more before we move on to very fast. Okay, let's go from that again, that 4th bar. Three. Okay, I'm conducting it, but it's pointless because of the time lag. But I'm conducting what I'm hearing. That was good. You could be longer with that final chord. Just sit on it, and then breathe and off you go again. One more time, please. Bar 4. Right, lovely, good, well done. That was better than you played in the recording. The very fast and rhythmic section. It was more rhythmic actually. Hear how jazzy that is. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? So really feel that slightly jazzy sense in the music. And look where the accent is. It's on the second note, on the second semi-quaver of the bar. Yep, let's go from the second line. Okay, two things. I'm not hearing the accent, I'm afraid. The second note of each bar is at that chord in the right hand. And in the fourth bar, it's not quite rhythmic. We've lost the rhythmic control that you had in the first three bars. So would you try that again for me, please? Yes, lovely, great. Okay, okay, change of character. Bottom line, let's hear what's going on here. Okay, let's do that again. Let's do it again. I'm trying to sense the pulse. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 4. That sort of, and it says sinister. So this is, I don't know what our story is. It might be this is the cat creeping up stealthily, getting ready to pounce on the mouse. Off you go. Yes. Okay, that works. I felt the pulse a bit better then. Wasn't quite even. Also, look at the dynamics on that bottom line. I've only just noticed this myself. First two bars, piano crescendo to sforzando. But the next two bars, pianissimo, crescendo, and then down to pianissimo again. So the first two bars are different from the next two. You want to have one more go at that and keep going into the next page. Okay, thank you. Okay, bottom of the first page, last bar. I think the left hand staccato dryly, that was fine, but the right hand chord, I think you should keep the notes held down. No pedal, but keep the chord down with your right hand and the staccato underneath. Yeah. Okay, so the next page, where is it? It's marked as page 3. That worked nicely until we get to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 6th bar, where the left hand continues the semi-quaver movement, but it was a little bit untidy, basically. I couldn't quite hear the notes. I still want to hear the doodle 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 doodle, and then a 6. Diddle 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 dum. Can we play from there? The 6th bar on page 3, please. That grace note D, make sure, I think that comes, which comes first? You do the chord and that together. No, I don't think so. We do chord and then that. Yeah. One more time then, same place. Okay, and when you go to that little sextuplet in the next bar, again, rhythmic, diddly diddly dom, diddly diddly dom, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. Yeah, and it's a weird one, that. I think that's okay. Can you just go back 1 bar again to the fortissimo? Now to hear how the dynamics stay fortissimo with the chromatic left hand, and then when we get to the sextuplet, there's a slight diminuendo, and then keep going. I want to hear the transition into the next bit. Okay, yeah. Okay, the only thing to say there is those pause marks, you need to make much more of them. So on the 4th line, there's a double bar in the middle of the line, and it's got a pause, a fermata, and the word long. He wants you to hang on to that for ages. And the reason for this is not to give you a rest, it's to get a sense of expectation. Think of the cartoon, the silence, the moment of what's going to happen next. And then it happens. And it's got to be almost like a little surprise when it does. And you've got another one at the end of the first of that page, where you've got a little group of rests and another pause mark. Another place where everything is just held in suspense for a moment, and then we carry on. Okay, so I'd like you to really make much more of those. Just try that one more time then, from that fortissimo on the 3rd line, please.
Another 5 minutes, Nicholas.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. That last space could be longer, to my mind. Silences always feel much longer than they are. Is that the right way of saying it? From an audience point of view, that was nothing. From your point of view, playing it, it felt like a long silence. But you need to make it longer, because if you're in the audience, there's sort of like a time lag before they realize there's a silence. So make it bigger. Okay, I want to go to the bottom of page 4, please, where you've got some big chords, and it says chimes, echo, pianissimo, like bells. When I heard the recording, these didn't sound as though all the bells were being struck at the same time. So can I just see if you can get those controlled? Yes, I can hear ka-chung, 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 instead of chung, chung. The first one was correct, the other two had a bit of ka-chung in them. Again. Lovely. Okay. Page 5, 4th line. Dim e ritenuto. I heard the dim, but I didn't hear the ritenuto. So you may have done one, but I would like you to do more of one. And at the end of that line, notice another double bar and another pause. So we need a silence, a moment of expectation. Could you play from that fourth line for me, please? Okay. Yeah, the dim and ritenuto line was much better, and the pause was good. Just think about when you're going to lift the pedal off, though, at the end of that line. I wasn't quite sure. It was sort of left down longer than I thought it needed to be. Page 6. Look at those accents. Another jazzy bit here. It's semiquavers going dagga 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 dagga, but the accents dagga 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 dagga. Yeah, they're punching through in unexpected places. Could you just have a just go from the top of page 6? Let's hear those accents being punched through. Yeah, something like that. You get the idea. Now jump to the last page, please, and look at the ending. This is where perhaps the cat has caught the mouse and he's a little bit hurt. But he's not dead yet. He's going to limp off the stage. And it says, after the long pause, limping slightly. Now, I think you can do this a bit better. When I heard you play your limping slightly bit, I heard this sort of thing. Like triplets. And they're not triplets, they're dotted notes, dotted semiquavers, so they're a bit crisper. Yeah, yum, da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. Let's hear that, please. Lovely. That could even be shaped a bit more. Dum, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. You could play with that. You could add in a little writ there, and it would just give it a bit more character, just help to tell the story a bit more. Yeah, as if he's getting, oh, my leg is hurting. Oh, I'm not going to get that. Oh. And then the very ending, that's like a little joke. That could be back to tempo, and that says, I'm all right, really. Yeah? Let's have the last 3 bars then again. Yeah. And he just runs off the stage as if he's not really hurt. All ready for the next episode. Terrific. Well, that was fun. Thank you very much. I enjoyed that. And well played. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas.
Thank you.
Let's go for the last performer, Angela Lee, and she'll be playing Fable from Fantasiestücke, Opus 12 by Robert Schumann.
Hello, Angela. Thank you for that. Well done. Wow. Schumann. Oh, it's quite a challenge. So, one main reason, he was a very strange person. For one thing, he was obsessed about the size of his hands. What are your hands like? Are they huge?
No.
Let's hold them up. Mine, they always look bigger when you do that in the camera. Yes, no, yours don't look enormous. They look very nice and sensible. Schumann was obsessed about the size of his hands because he liked writing music for a big hand span on the piano, as you can see. In fact, he got a bit obsessed about it, and you may have heard that he invented this machine that he put his fingers into, and then he tightened these screws and it spread the fingers wider. Have you heard that story? Unfortunately, one day he tightened the screws too much and he broke his hand. And it was never much good afterwards. So he was a bit silly, really. And the other thing that I think is a bit strange about Schumann is that is what this is all about, what these pieces are all about, the Fantasiestücke, the imagination pieces, if you like. Not just these pieces, the Fantasiestücke, there's, I don't know how many there are, 10 or 12 or something. But other pieces that he wrote as well were obsessed with the same idea. And that idea is this. This is the inspiration. Have you ever heard of these characters? They're called Florestan and Eusebius. They're sort of like clowns. And Schumann believed that he was both of these. One of them was dreamy and romantic, and the other one was more passionate. And he felt that these characters represented the two sides of his personality. It's like he had a split personality. And he wrote loads of music all about this idea of two characters. And in the Fantasiestücke, some of them are about Florestan and some of them are about Eusebius. But Fable, in fact there's only two I think that do this, has both these characters in the same piece. That's why you've got these contrasts. The dreamy one and then the passionate one. So we need to make sure that those two characters are really clear to understand the duality of his personality. So we've got that to think about, and And none of us, to be honest, have got hands big enough. Apparently Rachmaninoff had very big hands, and so he didn't have to worry about that. He could just write things that from very big hand spans that a lot of us struggle to play. I struggle to play Schumann because my hands aren't big enough. So you did brilliantly. There are some ways in which we need to try and get around it. Some work well and some don't. So let's take that first chord. The right hand's okay, but the left hand, you have two notes which are a big stretch, a C going up to E, a tenth. Can you play those two notes in the left hand at the same time? Some people can, some people can't. Okay, but can you do them together? Maybe not. Then you're like most people. What about if instead of playing, I don't know if you can see my keyboard here very well, instead of playing them on top, you take your hand round and play them on the edge. You see what I'm doing? Get myself out of the way. Yeah, and then just try that. Try the first 4 bars now and see if you can play those notes on the edge to get the sense that they should be together instead of that ka-chung. Okay, what I would like to hear, and it may be impossible, don't stretch your hand and break it, whatever you do, but if you can play on the edge, this is what we are aiming at. Something like that. You see what I mean with the chords? The chord notes all sounding at the same time. Tricky. Okay, so it sounds as though you can't reach the 10th. In that case, you have to do the bottom. You have to play it with a gap. In that case, you need to make it sound as though it's meant to be like that. Start it really softly then. And here now. And it's fine. It's fine. It's not what he wanted. It's not what he wanted. Not what he wrote and not what he wanted. But we have to work with what we've got. So make it sound as though it's intended to be separate, a separate note. Almost like an upbeat. Pop, pum, doo, 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 doo. Yep. Okay. So we need to think of those bass notes as in a rhythmic context as an upbeat, almost like a quaver or a semi-quaver, perhaps. Yeah, semi-quaver. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So what I'm doing is putting them as a semi-quaver at the end of the bar. Yeah, lovely. Okay. The next thing I'd like to say to you, Angela, is about those pauses in the 3rd and 4th bar, which I think need to be much, 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 much longer. Yeah, so just listen to the way I did that earlier. Also, the second note should be louder than the first, because we have a crescendo. See how long I'm taking? And I think that's absolutely fine. If you listen to recordings by some of the great pianists like Alfred Brendel, Arthur Rubinstein, they take forever with those chords, with those pauses over the chords. So I think it's fine to do that. It helps to create, remember what we're trying to do, which was the dreamy one. I was getting them muddled up. I wrote it down. Eusebius is the dreamy one. So we need, this is him, this is his character in the music. Try those first 4 bars again, if you would. Those pauses are still far too short. Make them twice, even 3 times as long. Doesn't matter. Take as long as you like. Just dream. Let each one be a little dream sequence in its own right. Okay. Now the next section is the other character, Eusebius. I think you did this brilliantly. There's not a lot to say about it. It's just trundles along, trips along at its own pace. You've got the right sense of pace. Some people take this too fast, and it's not. You know, you see we've got 2 words. We've got an Italian word and a German word, as if they are translations, direct translations. Well, they're not really. Presto, the Italian word, is very fast. Very fast, really. But schnell means quick in German. Quickly. Quick. It's not quite the same. Very fast and quickly are not the same speeds, really. Quickly is just what you did. And I think what you did was correct. Remember, Schumann was German, and he would have written German words. He would have written schnell. He probably didn't use the word presto, because he wouldn't, because he wasn't Italian. So we can forget about those Italian words that the editor has trying to be helpful by putting in there for us. Actually, I don't think he's helped at all. So your tempo was absolutely right on that. At the end of that schnell section, before we go back to the, I'm going to use German now, langsam section, there's another double bar. And a double bar means, okay, start of a new section, but it also suggests to me a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a break, a little bit of silence before we place the langsam in the next section. So could you play, please, from the schnell, and then go on into the langsam. Take your time at the double bar. Okay. Yeah, I think the pacing was fine. I just want to hear what you do at the last bar of the schnell. There's 2 ways of approaching this. We either slow down a bit, or we deliberately don't slow down and keep it the same. I think it might be fun just to keep it the same, and then it will stop abruptly. Like that. Just play me the last bar, and then before the langsam, and then into the langsam after a break. Yes, okay. Yeah, but you need a break before you then go to that bottom G. So, what is it? Da 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 da. Then you go on. I want to hear a silence where there's a double bar. Always. Almost always. I didn't hear any pauses though. I didn't hear any fermatas on those. On the. Okay, let's have that langsam again and much longer on those pauses. Yes, I think those last three chords with pause marks, they should get progressively longer as well. So we have, yours did the reverse. And then there's another one. And then off we go. Okay. Let's try that last second phrase in the langsam. Yeah, that was good. That was nicely paced. It's all about the pacing and the timing and taking your audience on that journey with you. Okay. So, okay, good. I'd like to turn to the second page, page 26 it is here. I don't know if you want to start directly there or run into it, whatever you feel comfortable with. I want to see what you're doing with the accents on the top of the next page.
Sorry, should I continue from page 26?
Yes, please. Can you start at the top of the page? Is that easy? Okay, hold it there. Very good. Nice. That really is starting to bring out the Eusebius character there, the stormy, the passionate one. The accents are really important to punch through the texture, and you're doing that rather well, actually. But of course, as you know what I'm going to say, as I've said to everyone else, you can do more. You can punch those through even more. I liked what you did as we move down that page, and we have the right hand and left hand each sort of answering each other with the melody. That worked nicely. And make sure you're consistent in the way you do that. Something funny happened in the middle, and I felt I lost a beat or something. I'm not quite sure what happened. Would you, let's give that another go. Now I've said my piece about accents and pushing them out more. And I'll just keep a closer watch on on the rhythmic stuff as you're doing so. So, same place?
Another 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the pace, that was great. No problems with that at all. Can you just start where you've got to from that forte with the ascending sort of scalic passage? Okay, yeah. There's something we can do here to bring this a bit more alive. So you've got all those, yeah, and then you've got this. Where are we? You've got this. And then another one. Yeah, you see what I'm getting at? I'd like to hear those a bit more forcefully. We've got an aim. Where do we start from? Well, they're all the way through, really, but I think once you have the arpeggio, that's where we need to have them really punched through again. Each one, I notice, is marked forte. You doesn't need to do that, because if you say forte, it carries on forte until you say something else. But he's deliberately marked them, or the editor has, as forte, just to remind us that we want bum bum every so often. Also, those octaves going dun dun dun. Yeah, also marked forte. So they want us to be aware of that. That's what the composer is intending. So that's what you need to make sure happens in the performance. Do you want to pick that up anywhere in the middle of that section? Yeah. Lovely. Terrific. That's really coming across beautifully. I just want to look at the very end. Having talked about the slowness of the langsam and the pause marks, the last 8 bars or so, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, yes, we have this rallentando, immer langsamer, always getting slower. Now, bearing in mind we started very slow, I'd love to hear how you can control this pace till the very end, making sure every bar is slower than the one before it. So it's going to become almost going to grind to a halt when we get to the last couple of bars. So let's finish off by hearing the last bars. That was all. That was very good, except for one chord, which was too short. And that was the dotted crotchet in the bar before the last bar. You cut the dotted crotchet short. Everyone does this. I don't know why. Not just you four, but all over the world, people cut dotted notes short. So can you play me the last 3 bars? And this is the pace. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Very nice. Very well rounded off. Thank you, Angela. That was excellent. Well done. Well done to you. Well done to everyone. Been terrific hearing you play.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. Now we have a Q&A session.
Yeah.
Before that, do you have a word for all the performers, or do you have a conclusion or a general comments to everyone?
Yes. Can I just check that I've not frozen your end? Am I moving around?
Yes, you're okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, my screen's gone a bit weird, but you're all fine there.
All right.
Okay, yeah, some overall things. I mean, 4 excellent performers playing 4 pieces which are challenging in their own way and very different from each other. Interestingly, all apart from the Rachmaninoff, which was much more grown up, remember I used that term, all the pieces were written by young men in their 20s. So there's a youthfulness about them. The youngest was Copland, who was only 20. Schumann and Mozart were about 26 when they wrote their pieces. So very young, really. And there's a sort of wonderful, almost naivety about the music and the way they're writing, which is great. And that can be something you can have some fun with. People remember, we always think of composers, especially from this sort of period, as being old, male, white, and probably dead now. But we forget sometimes just how young they were when they were writing this stuff. And, you know, they're younger than your parents, probably. Yeah. So young, really young. You know, some of you may have brothers who are that age anyway. So keep that in mind. This is young music. It's youthful music. It's not old people writing with years and years of experience and knowing what they're doing. These are all 3 of them are sort of quite experimental in their own way. Rachmaninoff is different because he was older. He was 37 when he wrote his Prelude. And he'd had a tough time in Russia, and he was going to have an even tougher time after he wrote this piece because of the revolution, and he had to leave his home country, and it was impossible for him to ever return. So that's the fun thing. Always look into the context of the pieces. These pictures that I dug out are really important because they help tell that story and help us understand what that music's all about. Now, there's always a bit of an uncertainty as to whether it's good to play from memory or not. I don't think it matters a lot. And it depends a bit on what sort of the way you learn, I think. For me, probably because as a composer, I've always got music in front of me and I'm writing it and reading it. To not have that, I find it very unstabling. So I'm not very good at playing from memory, actually, which is odd. I can sight read well because I'm used to reading music, but playing from memory, not. But for some people, it's good. And I think for a performer, it's very good with certain pieces because it can free you up from having to read the dots and it can help you to communicate the music better to your audience. Now, interestingly, watching your videos is a different experience from seeing you now playing the pieces. And I'm sure it would be a different experience if I was there in person, in terms of the communication. Increasingly, we're using video now to talk, to play, to share. And it's really important to think about how you come across in that context, in that video context. It's not just a matter of putting the camera up and playing. Think about what it looks like. Think about your set. And I enjoyed the ones, I don't know where it was or who it was, doesn't matter. There's the one with a nice painting on the wall, beautiful painting, I like the painting, kept looking at it, and a nice carpet. It just looked good. And I've thought a little bit about what I'm going to look like today. You know, I went out and bought some flowers yesterday. I thought it would look nice. And I'm wearing my Indonesian shirt because I think it's rather fun. You know, think about the presentation. And that's just as important with video as it is with anything else. One of you in your videos, only one of you, took a nice little bow at the end, which is a nice gracious way of saying thank you for listening. Think about how you start and end your video performance. It might be a nice idea just to say something at the beginning. Just to look at the camera and say, hello, I'm Angela, and I'd like to play you Fable by Schumann from his Fantasiestücke, and smile, and then turn and play. It's just a way of starting, rather than the side of your head and playing. So please think about that, because it's increasingly something we're doing more and more because of COVID. But it's not going to go away. I think we're going to be continuing to share music like this. And even exams, of course, can now be taken via video, either live or pre-recorded. So we can do it well. We can do it better if we think about the entire presentation of the video. Okay, that's the bit on that. Any questions on this? I'm doing all the talking. Do keep questioning me and challenging
I
me.
actually did ask them to ask more questions, but I think they're all shy. Oh, it's too cold here. It's actually very cold in orchestra hall.
Is it?
Yes, very cold.
It's always cold in Kuala Lumpur. I remember when I was examining there, I was always turning the air conditioning off.
Because it's hot out there. All right, maybe we can go straight to the Q&A session, and then we'll open up to the observers as well, the audience and teachers. Or even students. Yeah, you all can free to ask any questions. Anyone online to ask some questions about
how many people are in the audience, actually? Because of course I can't see the audience.
Oh, I think it's getting less because we have a few. We have 10 altogether.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, but just now we have 30 something, 36 or 38.
And are the audience students and teachers and parents? Have we got all of those represented?
Parents, I'm not sure, but most of them are students and some teachers.
Okay, because all three of those are important. They're all part of the equation. The student has to do all the hard work. The teacher has to steer them in the right direction, and the parents have to pay for it. So they're all in. We can't do it without each of those three. I suppose the piano tuner is also important. Mustn't forget them.
Yes. Okay, Angela has a question.
Yeah.
Hi, sir. I would like to ask for the students, like me myself, maybe we face some technical problem for our fingers. So is it advisable for us to to play more of Baroque piece or classical piece instead of romantic piece and 20th century pieces?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I think it's essential to have a wide understanding of the repertoire, not just for the technique, but actually for the musical understanding. They go together, hand in hand. Of course, the techniques are very different. The technique that you need to play Bach is different. The instrument as it was written for, is different, of course, from the instrument that Rachmaninoff was written for, with 3 pedals and all those great big fistfuls of chords. Bach was not even writing for the piano, writing for a harpsichord or a clavichord. So we need to understand that, and how does that affect the technique that we use? And how does that affect the music that we're trying to create? So just to answer your question a bit more about how to develop technique, I think there's no one technique. There are thousands of techniques, and you need to explore and discover what these techniques are. If you're going to play jazz, that's a different style. It's a different technique needed in jazz. And in that instance, there are other techniques. There's the technique of, it is a technique of improvisation, of being able to play spontaneously. So if I asked you to play me, if I ask you, what does Bach sound like? Don't tell me in words, just play me some Bach. You may not know Bach. You might know a little Bach. But what does it sound like? What does it feel like? So, just play an easy prelude. I've got the wrong notes, doesn't matter. I'm improvising now. Okay, what are the techniques I can use in this? I can romanticize it. Yeah, or I can be more authentic. Both are important, both are worth exploring. The second one was much more authentic and true to the original. But Bach had never heard of a piano, let alone an electric piano, so that even that would have sounded very alien to him. So explore the music as a way of discovering musical style and technique. I think they go together. Okay? Don't think music stopped. There we are, we're back in business. Lovely. I was just saying that for me, improvisation is just as important as playing scales, just as important as doing studies. It's all part of developing techniques. You can buy books that thick of jazz riffs and jazz patterns, incredibly complex. I've never done it, but I know they're fascinating, and some people love doing that sort of thing. But there's also more contemporary ways of improvising as well. Playing from chord symbols, as we do in rock and pop music, is great. It's really important. It's not that different from going back a couple of hundred years to what Bach did. He played from figured bass, bass line and some numbers underneath, which told him what chords he could play, and he would invent a melody on top. That's the same as rock and pop music, where you just have a chord of C, G, A minor, and C. It's the same idea. So those techniques, to me, are absolutely essential when people are learning and developing skills on the piano or any instrument. it's not reflected enough, I would say, in music exams. And when I was chief examiner, we started to include things like improvisation for the classical exams with Trinity College London. And in the rock and pop exams that we discovered, it's absolutely at the core of it, improvising, reading from chord symbols. Because you can only do it if you understand the style. And you can only do it if you know the techniques necessary to play that style. Yeah?
All right.
Good, thanks for the question. Good one.
Okay, may I ask a question, Nicholas? May I ask a question?
Please.
Yeah, we all know that you are former music examiner at Trinity College of London. So I would like to ask, for your experience as an examiner, what is your expectation when the candidates go into the exam? So
Yeah.
what do you expect in the overall music performance?
Thank you. Yes, I worked for Trinity for 16 years, and towards the end of that period became chief examiner. The role of the chief examiner was extraordinary. That's the only way to describe it. People expect chief examiner to know all the answers. They expect them to know every instrument and every syllabus and every graded exam inside out. And the reality is that there is a rolling program of syllabuses being refreshed all the time, overlapping. So the piano syllabus has a life cycle of whatever it is, 2 or 3 years. The violin one is a longer cycle, and all these cycles overlap. So you're constantly reinventing the syllabus. As a music examiner, I was very conscious that it's quite hard for teachers to change mindset. Very hard to change exam board. It's terrifying. But it's difficult to change mindset, so there's always an expectation that the syllabus never changes. But it does, sometimes very subtly. Not just the repertoire lists, but the other bits. And the syllabus isn't just a list of pieces to play for the exam. It's about how to prepare them. It's about how the music is assessed. It's the marking scheme for each grade, and the criteria for the assessment. Also, for the other bits like sight reading. When I was taking exams, I remember I used to think that the examiner just pulled out a random piece of music from his bag and put it on the music stand and said, "Play this." Now that I've been an examiner and chief examiner, I know it's not like that at all. The pieces that are used for sight reading are specially composed for that occasion. So a grade 3 sight reading piece is commissioned from a composer who's asked to write this piece for this instrument for this grade. There are guidelines that the composer has to write a grade 3 sight reading piece. And those guidelines are called parameters. The parameters are all in the syllabus, although sometimes they're online, sometimes in the syllabus. Those parameters are really important, and I'd love every teacher to have a look at them. So it will tell you what the parameters are. Let's stay with that example of a grade 3 piano piece. Can't remember them off the top of my head, but it will be something like this. It will be 8 bars long. It will be in the keys of C major, F major, G major, one of those. It will use minims, crotchets, and quavers. It will use the tempo indication, allegro or andante. It will use phrase marks and staccato marks. It will use pedal markings, things like that. That's the instructions given to the composer to write the test. But those instructions are also available for you, students and teachers, to look at. Once you know the parameters, once you know the rules of the test, it makes the test much more easier to prepare for. I know you can go and buy books of sight reading examples which meet those rules, and that's fine. But there's always the danger that as a teacher, we can just prepare for sight reading by just testing pupils and doing just what happens in the exam. Okay, let's get the sample sight reading book out. Here's your grade 3 piece, play it. That's not helping, that's just testing, that's not preparing, that's just replicating the exam. So what I tend to do with my students is do it the other way around and pretend, let's imagine the students are the composers writing the tests. So what I used to do with my students is give them the parameters and say, okay, you're doing grade 3, here's the rules, go and write me a piece of music or a grade 3 sight reading test, given these rules. And then come and play it next lesson. And that way, they really understand what the test is all about. And I found that a much better way of preparing students for sight reading than just giving them a test every week. So that's one example of how we can use the syllabus, not just check what you need to do, but as a teaching tool and as a learning tool for exam preparation. I think I discovered that there was about 80% of the pages in a syllabus were never read. Rules and regulations and this and that. And almost a waste of time putting it in, but we had to, because that's the regulations for the exam board. But please look at it, teachers and students, read your syllabus, understand the exam. I want to say something about the assessment of the exam. In fact, two types of exams. The graded exam, grades, in the case of Trinity, initial to grade 8. AB, also up to grade 8, exactly the same structure and exactly the same level of difficulty, despite what people say. We are, and other boards as well, like London College, and it used to be Guildhall, but that became part of Trinity. We exam boards are very closely regulated in the UK by something called Ofqual, Office of Qualifications. It's a government department. And they ensure that a grade 1 means whatever it means. And that grade 1 is the same, whether it's a Trinity, a London College, or AB. The content might be different, but the level of difficulty and the level of assessment is the same. In the case of Trinity, the graded exams are marked with 3 basic criteria: fluency and accuracy. That means, let's use Angela's Fable as an example. That means this stuff. Are you playing the right notes? Are you playing langsam? Are you playing schnell? Are you playing staccato? Are you observing those pauses? Okay, that's 7 marks for that. The second criteria is about technical facility. So it's not about that, it's about you and how you're playing the piano. We talked about those chords at the beginning with that ridiculous big spread, which we can't do in the left hand. How you get around that. What is your technique for playing that? When we heard the Copland earlier, Cat and the Mouse, we were looking at those chords like chimes, do you remember? And how they needed to sound together. That's a technique. So we're looking at the technique and the control of the instrument. Another 7 marks. And the third one is communication and interpretation. This is about the music itself. It's about this sort of stuff. What's the context? What's the story? You don't have to say it, but you have to show an understanding of it in your performance. So in your case, Angela, these 2 characters, is that evident in the performance? Is it clear? For me, as an examiner, sitting in the audience, in effect, I am your audience, do I get it? Do I get what you're trying to do? Is it communicating to me? Are you interpreting it in an appropriate way? So those are the three things. That's 8 marks, by the way, 1 extra, which makes 22. And for graded exams, each assessment, this is important to remember, it sounds obvious, but I'll say it. The assessment starts here and it ends there, obviously. And then the examiner says things like, thank you very much, and let's move on to your second piece, please, when you're ready. Yeah, you've had that sort of experience. That's graded exams. Now, many of you are at the stage when you're preparing or thinking about preparing for diploma exams. What's the difference? It's quite a big difference. The performance doesn't start there. It starts before that, when you enter the room, and it ends when you leave the room. So it's a much more holistic assessment of you as a performer. So when I was saying earlier about the video and just saying something at the beginning and the bowing at the end or whatever, that makes it a performance to me. You don't have to do those things in an exam, but just something that shows you're on stage when you walk through the door, as opposed to in a graded exam where you will probably be told what to do by the examiner. The examiner will say things in a graded exam. In the diploma exam, I'm talking about the performance exam, they won't say anything. They will just say, welcome, Angela, welcome to your ATCL performance. If you'd like, I'll hand over to you, and the floor is yours, something like that. And they won't say anything else until the very end of the exam, and they'll say, thank you very much, goodbye. That's it.
Right.
In terms of the assessment, the detail of the assessment, remember I mentioned those 3 areas for grades? Well, it's pretty much the same for diplomas, but expanded a bit more, of course. And rather than getting a mark for each piece, you just get a mark overall for fluency and accuracy out of 32, a mark overall for technical assurance and application, technique, 32, and a mark overall for your musical sense and communication, 32 again. What does that add up to? Not quite 100. That adds up to 96. There's another 4 marks, hardly anything, is it? But 4 marks can make all the difference between a pass and a distinction. Those 4 marks are for your planning and preparation for the exam, your program. Have you got a good program? Is it like all pieces by Schumann, which is probably not what we want to see? Is it a program of some different pieces, different styles, showing different techniques? Doesn't have to, don't think, oh, that means I have to do Baroque, classical and romantic. No, no, no. You don't have to do that at all. You can do an all-romantic program, an all-contemporary program. But there needs to be some contrast in that program, some variety. And also you need to produce a program booklet. And, you know, we've got the technology to do this so easily now. And I remember when I started examining, people, they would be handwritten with a little bow tied on the front, which was very pretty. And that was great. That's what people could do. These days, we're going to do it on a computer, aren't we, and print it out, and maybe include some images as well, which would be nice. A picture of you on the front cover, maybe a little headshot of each of the composers inside, and a little paragraph telling us about the piece, the context. Shows your understanding of the program, which is rather nice to have. So that's basically the difference. Does that make sense between grades and diplomas? 3 levels of diplomas, as I'm sure you know. Associate, licentiate and fellowship. Associate, very broadly speaking, is equivalent to what you would do at in your first year on an undergraduate degree. First year at university, first year at a conservatoire. That's the ATCL. The LTCL is like your finals performance after 3 years, say, at university doing a music degree. The FTCL is a much more professional qualification. It's a big step up to FT. That's postgraduate recital at a conservatoire. The marking for FTCL is different as well. You get a written report, no marks. You either approved for fellowship or not approved for fellowship. That's it. There are no numbers, no marking. That's the difference. So that's a very, very high level qualification.
All right, thank
You
you.
can consider FTCL unless you are out there giving concerts in the public domain already. Then you're ready for that, as a performer anyway. Don't forget also the teachers' diplomas, which we have at associate level and licentiate. They're great, and I wish we could encourage more teachers to look at at least look at the course content, because there's some really good stuff in there about developing teaching techniques. We talked about piano techniques and playing techniques. What about teaching techniques? What are those like? And they're always, you know, they change. They change. There's new ideas all the time about how to teach, and that's worth exploring. So as teachers, we never get stale. Keep it fresh.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nicholas. Yeah, I think we are running out of time, and yeah, that actually brings us to the end of the masterclass. I just want to thank you so much, you know, on behalf of all my students in Aswara. I think they will work on, you know, the techniques or the comments that you gave. Yeah, and hopefully
Lovely.
we'll meet up one day when you travel to Malaysia. That was our first plan,
I
right?
hope so.
Yes, I think it will be much easier and more convenient when you come here for physical, and you can comment more on the fingering. Maybe we cannot see through, yeah, from the
That's
videos,
right.
or the body movements, or you know, yeah, other body movements involved. Yes.
Well,
So
I'd be delighted.
yeah.
I'll be back in this part of the world from October onwards. And I'm based in Bangkok for 6 months of the year. So, and I'm normally, if we ever get back to a normal, usually visiting the countries in Southeast Asia, doing masterclasses, workshops, and all sorts of things. Now, I've got one other thing to say, and that for the 4 performers, because you've all done, I've really enjoyed your performances. I'm going to send you all a little something in the post to say thank you for your performances today. So it'll be a little something.
It's very nice of you. Thank you.
So thank you for today. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have. I hope I haven't been too critical of your performances.
No, I think it's very kind that you gave the comments that you gave is very easier to understand, and you know, you interpret it well. Yeah, and very straightforward. That's good.
That's very kind. Thank you so much, and good luck, everyone, with your future musical pathways. Hope to see you soon.
All right, thank you, and thank you, audience. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone who's been listening and watching.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Have a good day, everyone. Bye for now.
All right, bye.